Jack Smith wants Donald Trump convicted before the 2024 election. We've long known that, but now CNN is admitting it, and they said so with this guy on the air. Elie Honig explains that what we've already known, they need that conviction because Trump keeps rising in the polls. Every day they keep wondering what's happening to Joe, and the indictments and the criminal prosecutions haven't done it. So what is left? The conviction. Now, Jack Smith is moving forward pretty aggressively. We know that the case has been on appeal, which stays and stalls all the deadlines and gives Trump the opportunity to pursue the case on appeal. But Jack Smith submitted a notice to Trump saying, we're keeping this train on the tracks. We're still moving forward. Trump's defense was not happy about it. And they wrote a letter back saying, how dare you? We'll go through that. We'll hear how the media is really ratcheting up the rhetoric, saying that Trump is like a Nazi and that he sounds like Adolf, like literally, like Jake Tapper did a book report on it. So we'll see what he has to say. But first, here is the clip from CNN. Elie Honig admits what we've all already long suspected, that Jack Smith wants Donald Trump convicted before the election. That's what this is all about. That's why they saved the charges. That's why they dropped 4 of them like little chess pieces around the board: New York, Florida, Georgia, and DC. And they're doing the same thing with the J6ers, going after them. They're going after alternative electors in various different states. We're going to see more indictments there. It's all an orchestrated political attack. And now CNN is admitting it.
Agree with me that Smith and Judge Chutkan are acting based on the election schedule.
I do agree with you, Michael, and I think any fair-minded observer has to agree with that as well. Just look at Jack Smith's conduct in this case. The motivating principle behind every procedural request he's made has been speed, has been getting this trial in before the election. Let's take a couple examples.
All true.
The trial date. The average federal conspiracy and fraud trial takes about 1.5 to 2 years between indictment and trial. In this case, we have dozens, hundreds of January 6 rioters caught on video, straightforward cases. They too were given about 1.5 to 2 years between indictment and trial.
Yeah.
Jack Smith originally requested a trial date for Donald Trump, a far more complex case, 5 months out. He wanted a January trial. It was set for 2 months later. So Donald Trump is being given far less time to prepare than other defendants. And the actions this week, Jack Smith.
Look at this guy's face right here, man. He's like, what? And he's right, because there are 13 million pages of documents that are in Trump's defense that he has not even been able to review yet.
Won an argument on immunity in the district court and then went right to the Supreme Court. I think a right move. I think the smart move. The only reason you ask the Supreme Court to do that on an expedited basis is if you're racing against the clock. And Jack Smith clearly is doing that here.
Obviously.
Okay, I referred to the election as the Voldemort of the petition that he filed. Why not say that? Why not simply say there's an election on the horizon and I'm afraid this guy's going to get away?
I've not seen Harry Potter, so I don't know what that means. Is that a Harry Potter reference?
You will never hear either Jack Smith or Judge Chutkan utter the E word, election. They will not specifically say it. Instead, they use this sort of euphemistic language about the need for resolution, that kind of thing. Here's why I think Jack Smith is not willing to do it. 2 reasons. First of all, DOJ rules, unwritten and written, both say you are not supposed to do anything that could impact an election. In fact, you are supposed to affirmatively try not to take steps that might impact an election. And the second thing, and I think...
And we saw them talk about that back during Hunter, okay? When they were not going to prosecute Hunter, the DOJ, well, we're getting close to an election. And they kept kicking it down the road until they got into election season. And then after election season, when they didn't do anything, they said, well, it's too close to an election because we have a contested election. And so we still can't prosecute anything because it's still contested. So they use the rules when it serves them, and then they just ignore them when it doesn't.
Jack Smith is right about this, is if he is to say, okay, Judge, we really need to try this case before the election, Donald Trump is going to seize on that aggressively. He's going to say, see, folks, when I tell you this is political, Jack Smith has now admitted that he wants me tried before the election, and that's political. So I think he's very wary of that.
We agree that he is acting, Judge Chutkan is acting with an eye toward the election calendar. Now I want to hear Elie Honig assess the propriety of him doing exactly what he's doing. Because on one hand, you could say, well, he's being political. On the other hand, I guess you would say, Elie, like you probably back in the day, he's an aggressive prosecutor. He's worked the case up. He wants to get before a jury.
What's happening right now on CNN?
I don't like the artifice here. I don't like the game playing, the wordsmanship that we're seeing. I think Jack Smith ought to just come out and say it or not. Here's the arguments both ways. First of all, if Jack Smith is trying to get this case tried before the election, and he clearly is, look, that is political. I mean, the counter argument would be, well, Jack Smith just wants the American voters to have resolution before they go to the ballot box.
BS.
And I understand that. As a voter, I would like to know. But here's the problem with that argument, Michael. Jack Smith doesn't just want to get this trial done and let the chips fall where they may and let the consequences be what they can be. He's the prosecutor. He believes this case. He wants this case to result in conviction. And so his position isn't just, well, I want this case tried before the election. His position really, as a practical matter, is I want Donald Trump convicted before the election.
Yes,
I have no problem
obviously.
with the first part of that. It's his job to want and try to convict Donald Trump now that he's indicted. But the second part of that, before the election, that's where it crosses the line to the political, in my view.
Yeah, it does cross the line. And my question to him would be, do you think this is an ethical thing to do? You're a former prosecutor, right? I don't know if he is or not. Maybe he is. I'm shocked by this analysis, actually. It's like what we've been saying here for months. Now CNN is saying it to their viewers. Like, what? And he's dead right about it. It is political. Jack Smith is scrambling around to try to get this thing shoved through. He waited and charged it when he did so he could ask for the trial when he did. He thought he'd get it all anchored in there. Trump took this away from them with the very brilliant sequence of appeals that we saw. And now they're scrambling and they're panicked. And Jack Smith should have indicted him sooner, honestly. And then they could have had a trial sooner. But he's trying to thread the needle, right? And he got it. He got the trial date right when he wanted it, man. He got it anchored in there, but then they took it away from Chutkan, and Chutkan is not happy about that. So Jack Smith is going to try to keep things on the track. CNN is admitting that it is political, but now let me share with you what is happening. So this is the notice from Jack Smith's office. So for context, remember, Trump is appealing the January 6th case. We've covered all of these motions. If you haven't seen those, they were excellent. Trump filing his appeal, basically telling Chutkan that you're done. Okay, we're taking this case away from you. By filing the appeal, you cannot have any deadlines. You cannot require us to do discovery. We're not doing interviews. We're not considering subpoenas. It's done. And Jack Smith is saying, not really. Okay, can we please keep going? Here's what Jack Smith sent over to Chutkan's courtroom, even though the case is on pause. This is in the District Court for Columbia, D.C. This is Chutkan's courtroom. It's a one-pager. This is the government from Thomas Wyndham, subsigned by Molly. These guys say, okay, here's the government's notice of service, like they're still doing stuff, just letting the court know we're doing stuff. We're saying, what? No, you're not. They say, Jack Smith's people say, the court has determined that the deadlines in the pretrial order, okay, everything's on hold, are, quote, held in abeyance. They said, quote, but nonetheless, to help ensure that trial proceeds promptly if and when the mandate returns, the government today provided Trump with the government's draft exhibit list. And Trump's going, I don't give a crap what you sent to me. I'm not looking at it at all. And here they say the parties shall exchange list of exhibits that they intend to use by December 18, 2023. So electronic court filing entry number 39. So the government is saying, Judge, you told us at docket number 39 that you wanted our witness list by December 18th. And so today is December 19th. And the day before, on December 18th, we filed our draft notice. And Trump's sitting here going, what are you sending me this stuff for? Okay. As you know, everything is held in abeyance. So I don't want this useless draft exhibit witness list. I'm not even going to read it. But the point is, okay, Jack Smith's team they're still going. The court ordered that everything is held in abeyance, which means the December 18th date. They know that. They put it right here in their motion. If it's held in abeyance, then why are they still providing and complying with the deadlines? Seems like they're still not in abeyance. They're actually prosecuting the case. So Trump's defense said, oh, that's nice. Thanks for sending that over. We don't care. Here's their response to the notice of service. They submitted 2 filings. They say, guess what, Judge Chutkan? 2 pagers plus a letter. They say, here, Chutkan, Trump respectfully submits this response to the government's discovery notice. Wow, this is great. Which they say Trump respectfully submits this response to the prosecution's notice, which it filed in violation of the court's explicit order, quote, staying any further proceedings that would move this case towards trial or impose additional burdens of litigation on Trump. Why are they violating your orders, Judge? That's not what you ordered. You said, don't give us any burdens of litigation. If I have to read a draft exhibit list from Molly that's filled with highlights, are you kidding me? Talk about a burden. I'm not going to want to do that. So they say over the last 2 days, Jack Smith and the prosecution has improperly and unlawfully attempted to advance this case by serving thousands of pages of additional discovery, as well as a purported, quote, draft exhibit list. Now, these actions, the prosecution even admits, are calculated to, quote, help ensure that a potential trial proceeds promptly if and when the mandate returns. Now, such maneuvers are exactly, writes Trump's defense, what the stay order that came from Chutkan forbids, and impose a significant and a prohibited burden on Trump. He's got to read that thing. Now, as the court has recognized this case may not proceed in absentia, in Trump's absence, but rather it must stop. It is stopped because Trump cannot play two games at the same time, okay? He cannot be in the football field over here while he's playing basketball over there. He's got to be in one location. And right now, he's at the Court of Appeals. So Jack Smith is violating that rule, and he's putting more burdens upon him. So they say President Trump has an incontrovertible and inviolable right to be free from the burdens of litigation during his appeal. And as stated in Trump's letter in his response that we're going to read next, neither Trump nor his lawyers will review the prosecution's unlawful productions until and unless this court lifts the stay order. Oh, I love it. And Jack Smith, they are so mad over there. Okay, because remember, what we're trying to do is we have this timeline here, right? This is the pause, okay? This is when Chutkan issued the order staying everything. Now the clock is ticking. We're ticking away, coming over here. And at some point, we're going to have a resolution. And so Jack Smith's team is going to say, yeah, but this entire timeline, this entire span is not something that should be counted against us because we were working. Jack Smith is going to say, well, you put the stay here and we were working all the way up until this point. But Trump's going to say, I wasn't. Okay, this is all empty time. And so when the clock resets, Jack Smith is going to say, we don't need this bucket of time. Trump is going to say that we do. Whatever length of time, however many weeks that is, or however many months that is, Jack Smith is going to say, no, we were working this whole time. And Trump's going to say, I didn't even open your email. Like, I did not open it. Okay. And now that we're back on track, now it's time for me to open it. So you can work your butt off. I don't care what you're doing, but I'm not reading anything. And they sent that right back over to Jack Smith, which is a lot of fun because they're not going to be happy about that. Now, they sent this letter as well. And this was a fun one because this went over to Thomas and Molly. And you can see this is from Trump's defense attorney. They're writing this as a formal letter to the government. They say on December 18th, they say, all right, hey, Molly and Tom, I write on behalf of the defense team in response to your production letter that was dated December 17th that we just read, which purports to produce additional discovery to us and your purported other production of a draft exhibit list. They say, well, you sent those, but just so you know, both of these productions actually violate the court order. The court stayed this case on December 13th. And so accordingly, we do not accept the productions and we will not review them. Not going to look at it. Sorry. We ask that you refrain from all further attempts to impose litigation burdens upon us, including through discovery or other submissions until and unless the court lifts the stay order. Stop spamming our inbox with your garbage litigation burdens, okay? We're not reading them. And as you know, on December 1st, the court entered a memo opinion denying Trump's motion to dismiss on constitutional and immunity grounds. Thereafter, Trump filed a notice of appeal and moved for a stay of all the proceedings. Now, as set forth in our motion to you, which we know you read, we said the entire case is essentially involved in the appeal and therefore the entire case must be stayed. And that's from a 2023 Coinbase case. Love it. Additionally, we explained that the President Trump's immunity and double jeopardy arguments relieve him of the burdens of litigation until the appeal is resolved. Now, these burdens include discovery. They cite another case saying, yeah, discovery is a burden because you have to read it. You have to process it. Now, the prosecution even conceded this point, but nonetheless suggested that it could continue to litigate against President Trump in absentia. So while Trump is absent at the Court of Appeals, they're going to continue moving forward. Now, while the appeal is pending, although Trump will not be subjected to the burdens of litigation, the government will continue to shoulder its own burdens, is what they said. They said, yeah, okay. Now, specifically, Trump's defense continues. They write, the prosecution suggested without support that it could continue to move the case towards trial in Trump's absence by providing him with any notice required by the schedule. So we're just going to keep going, including depending on the length of the appellate process, the exhibit list, the motions in limine, and other things. But the prosecution did not cite any authority that would allow this kind of litigation or discovery. Why? Because none exists. The court, accordingly, did not adopt their proposal, Chutkan, but instead Chutkan stayed any further proceedings that would move this case towards trial or that would burden the defendant. Now, the court provide only two limits on this stay. They said that the stayed deadlines and proceedings are held in abeyance. So the deadlines are still on the calendar, but they're held in abeyance. They're not permanently vacated because this might come back and she can modify them later. And two, the court does not understand the required stay to divest its jurisdiction for the gag, essentially. Okay, so we're going to keep the dates on the calendar and we're going to keep the gag. But in reaching these conclusions, the court, Chutkan, specifically distinguished between the above categories, which it held do not advance the case towards trial or impose any burdens of litigation beyond what is already happening here, and said specifically that discovery does does impose burdens. And so, thus, there is no question, Molly, that your present discovery and draft exhibit list productions and any future productions violate the order in this case. Now, the prosecution admits as much in its filing this evening, which we just read. It states that it produced the draft exhibit list to, quote, help ensure the trial proceeds promptly if and when the mandate returns. Well, Trump's people aren't reading that, so that's not true. Both the stay order and the binding precedent forbid these unlawful actions, but they don't care. They're Jack Smith. Now, although the prosecution may wish to rush this case to an early and to an unconstitutional trial in hopes of undermining Trump's commanding lead in the presidential election, it must nonetheless abide by the stay order. Sorry, Molly. Now, as such, we will not accept and we're not going to review the present production. It's going to sit there unread, or any additional productions unless and until the court lifts this order. If the prosecution continues to violate this order, we're going to seek appropriate relief. Nice try. And finally, Molly, we note that based on the production letter, the prosecution possessed at least some of the identified materials before filing the indictment. And to the extent the prosecution withheld such materials for strategic or other improper purposes, we will address this issue with the court in the event the stay order is one day lifted. Interesting. So they actually did look at the production letter and they said some of those materials you should have given us earlier, but we'll deal with that later when we actually look into it. Your friend, John Lauro. Amazing. So they're not even reading it. Molly's working really hard, and she's very skilled with those highlighters, and she had everything organized and probably tabbed out and binded out. He's like, here's what I'm going to do with it. Right in the garbage. Thanks. Send it again. The trial's back on. President Trump does not concede that even these carve-outs would be appropriate, and we'll address those issues as well. So Trump's people telling the government, we're not even reading your emails. Stop sending them, okay, idiots? This case is on appeal. Leave us alone. But you can see Trump was right, okay? They're saying that they are freaked out. They don't know what to do about this because Trump keeps emerging, pulling away in the polls, and they're panicked. And this is why you see this type of rhetoric being elevated across the media. This woman is a former DHS person who was out saying that Trump is now engaging in dangerous rhetoric. And Jake Tapper has really been behind a lot of this. So we'll listen to some of this exchange and see what Tapper says here with this former Homeland person.
Explain what stochastic terrorism is
Stochastic
in the context
terrorism.
of Donald Trump continuing to spew not just I want stronger borders rhetoric, not just, we need to take control of who comes into this country, reasonable conservative positions, but calling immigrants from Africa, Asia, and South America poison in the bloodstream of the United States. What does that potentially do for unbalanced people out there?
So stochastic terrorism is just a technique that Trump has perfected in many ways, and we talked about it over the years. And it's a way of using language that is clearly meant to incite some percentage of the people listening for a violent purpose or for a noxious purpose, as the case may be. But it's not directed. I mean, in other words, Trump is good at sort of creating this atmosphere so that he can say, I didn't mean for people to go into the synagogue and kill, or to go in Buffalo and kill a bunch of African Americans. I didn't mean it. I never said to do that.
What?
But the language itself is creating an environment where he knows that his listeners, or some of his listeners, I should be clear here, will get incited from it. Let's just be clear. That's why he's doing it. I mean, we can no longer say that Trump is doing this as a means to an end. This is the end. This is why he's doing it. This Lindsey Graham, it's just words, but we like the immigration policy. It's the end.
Okay, so Trump's speeches are encouraging people to go in and do mass attacks. Is that where this is going? And it's his speech again. Okay, his speech is not directing anybody to do it, but it is causing them to do it. You see what kind of a dangerous pattern this is? What kind of a slippery slope this is? And it is to gag Trump. They do not want him to speak because his speech is causing people to want to vote for him. Here's another example from CNN. They've really ratcheted it up. This guy is explaining that they're using Nazi rhetoric and they're doing a fact check of this, okay, all over CNN, supporting statements from the Biden campaign saying he's parroting Adolf and using language that you heard from Nazis, right? This is the new talking point, so just get used to it. Here it is.
During a recent campaign stops in New Hampshire and Nevada, former President Donald Trump stoked fears about undocumented immigrants coming across the U.S.-Mexico border. Par for the course since the day he rode down the escalator and declared himself a candidate for president back in 2015. But the themes and choices of his words this weekend are significant. The former president again repeating language that echoes white supremacists. Trump saying that illegal immigration is poisoning the blood of our country. And on Sunday that migrants are invading from foreign prisons and mental institutions. Suffice to say, he offered no proof for any of that. Among others, former New Jersey governor and Trump GOP rival Chris Christie called Trump disgusting and his words dog whistling. The Biden campaign, meantime, responded to those poisoning comments, saying that Donald Trump parroted Adolf Hitler. Now, is that a fair comparison? Let's dig deeper.
Of course it
About
is.
15
CNN
years
did an
before he
analysis.
systematically murdered millions of people, Hitler put that phrase in Mein Kampf. Quote, "Great civilizations died out as a result of contamination of the blood."
Okay.
Calling it a poison to the national bloodstream and infecting public life. Hitler was warning about German blood being, as he described it, poisoned.
They have Mein Kampf up on the screen, okay, with quotes. Mein Kampf. Adolf's.
By Jews. At his prior event in New Hampshire last month, Trump also used the word vermin to describe his political rivals.
Wow. His rivals,
Comments
is what
that
he said?
were condemned by President Biden, as well as language you heard in Nazi Germany. Now, is that an accurate claim? Hitler's Nazi party came to power partly by pounding the idea that the German government was being overrun by Marxists, something that Trump has suggested now is happening in the United States for years. When he wrote about rooting out Marxists and Jews, Hitler wrote, quote, "There was time enough at home at least to exterminate this vermin." The Trump campaign did respond to criticism over his speech this weekend, saying that Trump's speech was great. They previously shot down that vermin comparison this way: "Those who try to make that ridiculous assertion are clearly snowflakes, grasping for anything because they are suffering from Trump derangement syndrome."
Fact check.
And they added this: "Their sad, miserable existence will be crushed when President Trump returns to the White House."
That's right, baby. It is going to be absolute beautiful, and you can't wait for it to happen. So this is just tremendous. Okay, so Stephen Chung is the person who wrote this statement from the Trump campaign spokesman in November. Says, "Those who try to make that ridiculous assertion are clearly snowflakes grasping for anything because they're suffering from TDS. Their sad, miserable existence will be crushed when President Trump returns to the White House." So he's doubling down on it. And they are going to be very sad. They're probably going to be screaming at the skies again. And you can see the language, man, is just getting very, very aggressive. Here, Tapper did the same thing, and this will be our last one. I just want to share with you what they're saying out there. And this is Tapper also doing the same routine, saying Trump is literally Adolf, and doing the compare and contrast again. Okay, watch what they're doing.
List. And he uses the term poisoning the blood of our country. Poisoning the blood of our country. If you were to open up a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf, you would find the Nazi leader describing the mixing of non-Germans with Germans as poisoning. The Jew, Hitler wrote, quote, "poisons the blood of others." This, according to Hitler, posed an existential threat to Germany because, quote, "all great cultures of the past perished."
Compare and contrast.
Only because the originally creative race died out from blood poisoning, unquote. There's really no other way to say it. Donald Trump's language mirrors this directly.
Adolf.
And this wasn't a one-off. Trump then went to Nevada on Sunday and used the same scare tactic with zero evidence that migrants are largely coming to the United States from prisons and from mental institutions. He made the campaign promise to begin the largest deportation of undocumented immigrants in American history.
You mean illegal aliens? That sounds good. Sounds like a good plan. So I don't know why they think this is going to work. I mean, I think a lot of people recognize that Trump was a very big friend of Israel. I think Jared Kushner is Jewish. Ivanka is Jewish. And so Trump is like Hitler. He's going to be killing Jews or something like that. What? These people have absolutely gone mental. And I think that the problem is they know that there's not much else that they can hang their hat on. They're running out of options. The racism crap isn't working anymore because you can see that even different contingents in different groups, like the African American group, right, are starting to vote for Trump in bigger numbers than they were in 2020, or starting to support him more. And so the indictments are not working. Maybe Nazi rhetoric will work. Maybe Trump's statements will work. I don't know. But they're trying everything that they can. They're even trying to keep the train on the tracks in the January 6th trial. Trump's lawyer said, "We're not reading anything," even though CNN is admitting now this whole thing's political. We'll be continuing to cover this, my friends. So thank you for joining us and subscribing as this case evolves. There will be a lot more to unpack. We also would love it if you checked out robertgovea.com. Grabbed a hat over there. We've got a new merch store with our new hat. This is the Watcher hat. And when you go to robertgovea.com/shop, you can learn more about what this symbol means. We put a lot of thought into it. It's the shield. It's the sword that cuts through the bonds of ignorance. It's the unbalanced scales of justice. It's Lady Liberty. It's Libertas. It's Justia. It's everything in this symbol. Go to robertgovea.com/shop. Check out the shop, my friends, and we'll look forward to seeing you right back here on the next one.